Hello, and welcome to the Quest for Games. I'm Jerry, and in this video, we're going to do a how to play of the 1 to 4 player game Clans of Midgard by Gray Fox Games. Clans of Midgard is a draft, right, and area control or light fighting game in which players play the leaders of Viking clans seeking to gain glory, conquer territory, fight monsters, sail the seas, collect powerful ruins, honor the warriors that have passed to Valhalla. The player who best achieves their goals will forever be remembered as a Viking champion. So what does all that mean? Let's get it to the table and start the setup. So let's set up Clans of Midgard. First thing you have to do is look at the corner of the board here, and you'll see on this side it's got 3 Viking heads. On this side it's got 4. So the 4-player game, 3 or less players is this side of the board. The main difference you'll see is what's required in the center. But say for the 2-player, we're going to set up a 2-player game. So I need to have it on the 2-player side, 3 or less player side of the board. The next thing we have to do is hand out score sheets. So that's what the score sheet looks like. And we'll get into more detail on what the score sheet is during gameplay. Next thing we have to do is build the age deck. You have to separate your age cards into age 1 and age 2. You will shuffle each one of these decks, draw 2, put the rest back, shuffle this, age 2, draw 2, put the rest of those back, and you're going to put the age 1 on top of the age 2. So we now have a deck that has 2 age 1s and then 2 age 2s. And that's our age deck. You will then shuffle your rune cards, which have this back. You'll shuffle those and put them to the board. We will pass out 16, they say warrior cubes. This is a Kickstarter. And so I have these little meeples. Your mileage may vary. You may wind up with little cubes. I think that's the way the game is expected to go. And this is a neoprene board, and you might get a cardboard board instead of this neoprene board. You can see that it's rolling. That may be a good thing, that you get a cardboard board instead of this neoprene one. So we're now set up and ready to play. During setup, I failed to mention this dice. You have to have this dice out. First thing you do in a 2-player game is you wind up dealing out 3 stacks of 8 cards. Each person has 8 cards. The red player has 8 cards. The blue player has 8 cards. In a 2-player game, you have to deal a 3rd stack of cards out for a neutral player. Then we go into a draft phase. So you look at your cards and you decide which one you want to keep. You put that down in front of you, and then you pass your deck. And the same goes with this person. They look at their cards, they keep one, and they pass their deck. Let's go do a little bit of the anatomy of a card so that we can understand why and what we would want to be keeping cards for. This is your offer. This card, you're offering one to the gods. This space, the CD or the O, is a letter, and there is a grid on the score sheet that has letters on it. And so you'll be circling that letter on this grid based on the letters that are on your cards. There's also a spot here which is a monster spot. And if you have a pair of those same monsters, then you will be able to fight with a pair. You'll be able to fight any one of these monsters depending upon which one you have. This card happened to be this one here, which is worth 2 victory points. Then you have Valkyrie up here, which is something that'll happen. This one happens to be red. Each one of the territories is a different color, and there can be different color Valkyrie symbols in the top corner. When we get to the fighting, I'll explain what the Valkyries do. This is basically victory points. You total those number of victory points up, and you write that onto your scorecard in their glory. You get however many glory you had in those spots, as long as you got more glory the second hand than you got the first hand. out of the 4 rounds. But you have to make sure that you're gaining glory each time, otherwise you don't get glory. These symbols are the clan symbols that tell you which clan you're supporting. These symbols match the symbols on the map that tell you where you're trying to attack. And then that's a Drakkar, which is a boat that is also on your score sheet here that we'll talk about in a minute of what the boats do. You'll be drafting cards, passing your decks back and forth until everything's done. People have drafted all of their cards. In a 2-player game, this neutral party, you do not draft those with those cards. They don't get any drafting. They just sit. This deck just sits here. At the end of the round, after the end of the draft, the first thing that you do is you look through your deck and you find all of your offerings. So this character, the red player, has 2 points worth of offerings. The blue player has no points worth of offerings. So the 3 points worth of offerings that the red player has means they win the god and they have the god's favor for this round, this age. The next thing you do is you look for the most clans that you have. So we'll sort this by clans. Oops, this one's upside down. So we got a boar clan, a boar clan, a falcon clan, a boar clan, a wolf, a serpent, raven clan. So this particular person, these 2 are the lowest, so they don't mean anything. Here there's a tie between how many wolves they have and how many boars they have. So you look at this chart here and you say, oh, boars come before the wolves. So the wolves aren't going to be used at this part either. So we'll take out the 3 boar cards that they have. And you see a symbol next to it that shows a territory. So he gets 1 on the blue and 1 on the purple, and then another 1 on the blue and 1 on the red or orange and 1 on the yellow based on these 3 cards. So we do the same thing with the other players. This person has 4 boars, so they get a purple, they get a yellow, they get a red, and they get a green. And so that's their troops. And since we're playing a 2-player game with the neutral party, we have to look at the neutral parties to see which they have the most of. They have a tie of wolf and ravens. Ravens come first, so they're going to put their people out based on the ravens. 1 on the blue, 1 on the green, 1 on the red, and 1 on the yellow. So that was the first thing we did was we looked at glory. The second thing we did was we figured out the clans. And then based on the clan who was the most, we put out the warriors based on that. The next thing we have to do is look at our cards and figure out what letters we have on our cards. The blue person has an H, G, J, U, R, T, F, M. So they would go into here and circle. They would pick, because there's an M here, and there's 2 M's in here. So they would circle one of the M's. They would circle an R, a U, an H, a G, J, T, and F. They would circle those things. At the end of the rounds, we'll see if they're making any, if they've got any that are a full column or a full row, and they'll get victory points based on that. Then the next thing we look at is the monsters that are on the cards. And this person has 2 dragons, 2 dragons there, 2 trolls. So they've got 2 trolls and actually 4 dragons. Well, unfortunately, you can't kill the dragon twice. You can only kill the dragon once. So they've killed a troll and a dragon. So that's 7 points. So they would go to this spot right here and write a 7 in that spot, because there's the monsters. So they would write a 7 right in that spot. So this player actually has a troll and whatever that thing's called. So they would get 5 points put in that same spot. Then we look at victory points. And this person really went in for the victory points, they would get 2, 4, 6, 7, 8 victory points. So they would, in this spot, they would write an 8. The problem with that is that next round they have to have a 9. If it doesn't go over, see how this number's got to be greater than this number? None of the other ones do that, just the glory. But your glory, if you don't have more glory the second age than the last age, then you can't put the glory in there in the second age because you didn't gain more glory. So we wrote an 8 in there, and like I said, you have to have more the next round. If you only had 6, you would put a 0 there. And then this round you're going to be higher than 0, so you're going to get some points then. But you're basically doing a risk versus reward kind of a thing, saying, am I going to get more points next time than I got this time? Okay, so the next thing is the Drakkar or the ships. The blue player has 1, 2, 3, 4 ships. So they go to the Drakkar spot on their score sheet, and they decide how many ships they want to mark off of each one of the rows. If they went to the green row and they marked 1, 2, 3, 4, they would be able to launch one ship because of that symbol. If they come down here and do like the yellow row, they can do 1, 2 and launch a ship there, and 1, 2 and launch a person there. So they could launch somebody into the purple and somebody into the yellow. So let's just say that's what they did. And they put somebody in the purple and they put somebody in the yellow because they didn't have the most in either of those two spots. Red player can do the same thing. We'll just say they did 1, 2, 3, 4 in the green. They did 1, 2, 3, 4 in the green. You're supposed to be doing this in secret, but so they put 1 into the green down there. So now we've done the Drakkar, the ships. So the last thing we have to do is the Valkyries. The red player has the orange Valkyrie. The blue player has the purple Valkyrie. For the Valkyries, you can mark off one of the different Valkyrie symbols. So the blue player could mark off the purple Valkyrie symbol, and the red player could mark off the red Valkyrie symbol. But we don't want to do that right yet. So now we're ready to do the battle. And in the battle, we have to go look through each one of the territories, and there's a number on each territory. And you do the territories based on the smallest numbers first. So this one here, the yellow, it needs at least 3 people for a battle to happen. That's what that 3 means. We have 4 people in here, so the battle's going to happen there. What happens, the person who has the most wins. So blue has the most, so their 2 people go here. Yellow, because they're a third party, nothing happens with them. The red player has got to go into here and mark off 1 warrior has gone to Valhalla. Warrior comes back into their stash. Now we go to this one, and it says there's 4. It needs to have 4 to go off. Well, there isn't 4 warriors here. This one needs 4 to go, and there's not 4 warriors there. This one needs 5 to go, and there's not 5 there. This one needs 6 to go, and there's not 6 there. So going back to the 5, the red player had the red Valkyrie, so they have to mark the red Valkyrie off because they can't roll the dice. If we happen to have 5 warriors in that spot, then they could roll this dice, and that slash would mean that they're still marking off their Valkyrie. If they get this slash, they're still marking off the Valkyrie on the score sheet. If they roll this, they get to add another warrior. If they roll this, they get to add 2 warriors. But since the battle wasn't going to happen, they didn't roll that dice. Same with the purple for the blue person. So they would both have marked off their Valkyrie symbols. And at the end of the game, you'll see it says down here that you get 1, 2, 3, 5, or 7 based on how many Valkyries you've scratched out. And the same with Valhalla, the red person gets 1 to Valhalla. But now when we're all done with that, the blue player has 2. They got a victory in yellow. So they'd scratch off the yellow symbol saying they got a victory in yellow. And then they would put into here, they would put a 2 because they got 2 warriors. That was a little weak. So let's just do something to make some more things happen, right? I'll put 2 here. So now we got 5. We'll put 1 in each of these, so we got 4 in each of those. So now we've had a battle in here. Well, this is a tied battle, so both of them win, so they would come up here. This is a tied battle, so both of those win, so they would come up here. We don't care about the yellow because it's the neutral party. This one's 5. It's another tied battle. So actually, this is a yellow battle. Yellow won this battle, sorry. Oh, but I can roll my Valkyrie. Instead of marking it off, the yellow can roll the Valkyrie. Or the red, they get 1 more warrior out there, but they still don't have enough to beat the yellow. So these all go to Valhalla, and you would mark off, the red would mark off 2 more, the blue would mark off 1 that went to Valhalla. And now we have 4 blue up here, so the blue would put, because they won in the blue territory and in the yellow territory, they would scratch off the blue and the yellow, and they would put a 4 in there. And the red won in the green, so they would have scratched off the green territory, and they'd put a 2 in here. And then all these meeples would go back to their starting spots. You can see in here, there's a 1, 3, 6, 10, and 15. So based on however many of these areas you've had a battle and won in, you get more victory points. So that encourages you to spread yourself out, trying to get more victory points. So that's the way a round would go. At the end of a round, you would take all the cards back, shuffle them all back together again, deal out 8 more cards to each one, do the draft all over again, and do all the stuff that we just talked about in the last round. And now you would have flipped over a new god, a new age, which would have a new god. Whoever had the most offering would win that god, and so on. You just do that 4 times. Each age has its own god. You do that 4 times. Once you're done, and you've done that through the 4 times, and you've marked all your scores up on the score sheet, at the end of the game, you would go through, and first thing you would do, and that's what this is trying to tell you down this side, the first thing you would do is you would look at your letters and add up the circled numbers from completed rows and columns. If you had this row, you get 1. If you had this row, you get 4. If you had this column, you'd get 3. So you add that up and you put it in here, however many you have. You put that number in there and then transfer it over to there. And then you add up all of your slaying, all of the monsters you've slayed points, and you put that here. You'd add up all the glory you got, you'd put that there. So you add up all the territory you have here, plus you add in whatever victory points you get bonuses from these things that you've scratched off. You add those together and you put that into the spot for the territories. You go through Valhalla and you figure out how many points you have based on how many people went to Valhalla. You would add this across the bottom, right? So it's 1 plus 1, then you got 2, now I got 4, and so forth. You also get the Valkyrie victory points added into the Valhalla spot. So you add up these numbers and then you figure out how many Valkyrie you had. You add those all together and you put that into here. Then you go figure out, based on the god cards that you have, you figure out how many points you got based on your god cards. So like this one here, Thor says for Thor's worth 2 victory points, and then any other gods that I got, the red player got during their turn, they would get 2 more victory points. So you add up the victory points you get out of the god cards and you put it in there. Then you total this entire column and you come up with a number. And that's your final score. And the person who has the highest final score is the winner of the game. So one thing I guess I need to make sure that I point out, because I contrived and made more battles happen in here. This one, there wasn't a battle in here. There shouldn't have been battles in other places. They just stay from one round to the next. These would be sitting in here until the next round. And based on the cards that you drafted, you would put more warriors out. And that's pretty much how to play Clans of Midgard. So let's go to final thoughts. Final thoughts for Clans of Midgard. As you saw, there's a bit of drafting in the game, which is a good mechanic. I like that. There's some, they call it writing. You're keeping score of the different things that you do. There's different things that you can do to lean into certain areas to try to get more points in those areas. Maybe that would mean you're not focusing on something else. So that's the kind of the right aspect of it. And then there's the territories that are on the map that you're kind of doing area of control, or they call it a fight, but it's more of area control, who has the most people in there. The Valkyrie dice can be a little interesting because you can, oh, I think I have the most people in there, and then somebody rolls his Valkyrie dice and they add 2 people to that. And all of a sudden, oh no, now I don't have enough and I don't have the most and I lost. The God cards are kind of interesting. Some of them actually give you some direction. Like one of the gods is, they give you a certain amount of victory points for having that god, and then you get a victory point for each one of the ships, the Drakkars that you've marked off. So that makes you look for Drakkar cards, or cards that have the ship on the bottom of them. There's different things about each one of the gods that kind of force you to try to do a certain play to get more victory points at the end. So that gives you a little bit of a direction. So each time you play the game, you're playing a little different because your focus is going to be different based on the gods that are there and what they're doing. The build quality, this is a Kickstarter. I paid for the Kickstarter. So I have the little meeples. I'm not sure that the way that the instructions talk, they look like they're going to be little cubes, wooden cubes. Wooden cubes are okay. These meeples are really nice because they have the little stickers on both sides, and those stickers came on there. But a wooden cube would be okay. I think a regular game, the way the instructions read, I think the regular game will have a cardboard player board instead of this neoprene mat. I generally like neoprene mats, but this one rolled up on me, so I'm not sure. But the build quality is pretty good. Gray Fox Games usually does a good job with the build quality. Rating, I had said this in an earlier video this year. I'm going to change my rating system so it's on a normal 1 to 10 scale, the 10 being the highest you can get, and 1 being the lowest. I would put this probably about a 7. I like the game. With the right audience, it's a fun game to play, but it's not something that I can play with everybody. The pros for the game, the drafting mechanic in it is kind of nice. I like drafting games, so I like that. The area control and the little map, it doesn't take up a lot of table space. The box is kind of small, and it doesn't take up a lot of table space, which makes it so it's something easy to get out. When I've played it, the game's gone pretty quickly. It says 30 to 45 minutes, and I think we can do that easily. As soon as everybody goes through that first round and you go through the teach, people start being able to do their scorecards independently of each other. So you're not waiting around for everybody to do their scorecards. The only thing you got to really wait for is the first one who had the most glory, so you can figure out who got the god. After that, everybody can do their own thing. You just wind up seeing the meeples on the battlefield at the end. And that's what I was trying to get to with the pro, that everybody's taking their turn pretty much at the same time, other than figuring out who has the most glory. The cons, to me, one of the cons is it feels a little bit twiddly, or whatever you want to call it, going around trying to do the score sheet, trying to put things into the score sheet and tallying, putting where in the score sheet, and that. I know there's a lot of people that like that kind of stuff. My wife does. For a con, that would be my only con. Is this game for you? If you like drafting, I think it's got a good drafting mechanic, and there's lots of different things on these cards for reasons why. Oh, I want to take this. Do I want to give up this one, or do I want to give up that one? So it makes the drafting a very thinky puzzle to say, well, what am I focusing on, and do I want to take this one? Oh, but this one looks so good. So you get a little bit of that. The area control is not tough. It's just who has the most meeples out there. So it's not really I'm rolling dice to fight you, or I'm playing other cards to fight you. It's just who has the most meeples out there. But there is that, there's a little bit of conflict in there. And then there's the keeping track of all your stuff on the scorecard and writing out what all you did and what are all your scores for each one of the things, which letters did you get. If you like that kind of stuff, fine. So as always, I bought the game. I'm not sponsored. Nobody gave me the game. So all the opinions that I've given you in this final thoughts and or while I was doing any of the other parts of this video, they're all my opinions, my thoughts, not anybody else's. And with that said, I think that's all my final thoughts. I hope to see you next time, and thank you very much.